Do you spend the extra cash and get a newer Mark 7.5 VW Golf R with 5 doors, or do you save a whole heap of money and get the slightly older, potentially less practical 3-door, and use the money saved for mods? Well, I'm here to give you the answer. My name's Tom, and you are watching Paragon Cars. Let's go! So first off, the motor. This has a 2-litre EA 888 turbo, a fan favourite and a favourite of mine. Why? Because it makes solid power throughout the rev range, is pretty reliable and can be tuned to silly numbers with just a few bolt-on mods. Talking numbers for a second though, this Mark 7 2015 Golf R makes 300 horsepower and 380 Nm of torque. That goes to all 4 wheels via a Haldex all-wheel drive system and a 6-speed dual-clutch transmission. The newer Mark 7.5 Golf gets slightly more power and torque at 310 horsepower and 400 Nm. Plus, it also has a newer 7-speed DSG. It'd be interesting to see what the difference is on the 30 to 70 sprint. So let's do that now, I guess. Scores on the doors then, and we managed bang on 4.4 seconds. Not a bad time, but when you look at the leaderboard, you'll notice it's the slowest out of the Golf Rs and similarly equipped Audi S3s we've done. My guess for that time is weather, and more importantly heat, that is the determining factor. Basically, cooler weather means more dense air, means better turbo performance. Fundamentally though, you're still keeping up with some pretty crazy cars like the 387 horsepower Mercedes A45 AMG and the mighty diesel Audi SQ7. Okay, interior. Is it any less practical than the 5-door? Despite the lack of digital cockpit and facelifted infotainment, you still have things like Bluetooth audio, felt-line door cards, and the little cubby next to the driver for your stash. Oh, and some rather rare, lovely two-tone leather seats. That's one advantage I don't often mention about used cars actually. Just think how much extra you'd have to have spent on all these extras like the two-tone seats and panoramic roof if this car was new. Now it's used, depreciation has kind of negated most of that cost, so you're no longer paying an extra 850 quid for a bit of sliding glass above your head. Right, rear. This is where the 3-door isn't quite as good as the 5-door. But you know what? For a 3-door car, getting in the back is still pretty damn easy. And even with the driver's seat in what I'd call a certy driver's position, I can still just about fit back here. You even get a climate vent for your knees, an armrest with cup holders, and some through loading. Even the door cards in the back are lined with felt. Very fancy. Then there's the boot. It's the same size as the 5-door at 343 litres. It also has a nice shape, has features like a 12-volt socket, shopping hooks, and a little clip that holds the boot floor up. Nice one, VW. Anyway, before we get on the road, here's a little clip of what a stock 2015 VW Golf R sounds like. Yeah, defo needs an aftermarket exhaust. Anyway, let's get cracking. So, do you really need a 5-door Golf R, or is the 3-door enough? And more importantly, does this handle any differently? Is it louder on the motorway or even quieter on the motorway? Well, we are going to answer those questions. But first, let's start driving around town. This car is equipped with dynamic chassis control, which is actually quite a rare option for Golf Rs. Weirdly, it comes standard on Seat Leon Cupras, but not the Golf R. Not entirely sure why VW went that route, but it is a very worthy upgrade. Makes the car very comfortable in comfort, funnily enough, and it makes it very sporty in race mode. And I will be showing you just how sporty it makes it later. But driving around town, steering is nice and light, yet pretty sharp. You know, lock to lock is only 2 turns in this thing, which does make it feel very agile. And then this 6-speed DSG, you know, even though this car is nearly 10 years old now, it still feels brand new. A lot of people complained about this gearbox, you know, in the earlier days, but I think it stood the test of time, really. Like, I think it's just a matter of looking after the car and making sure GoPros stick properly to stuff. Deary me. But anyway, the seats are nice and comfortable. You can't adjust the pitch of the base, which is a bit of a shame, but the base itself is kind of angled right anyway, so it doesn't really matter. You don't get a extendable bit for your thighs either, but what you do get is a bit of under-seat storage, which is very nice. You can use that for your stash, as well as your little cubby here as well. A well-designed car, this. Plenty of storage options. And of course, as I mentioned in the intro, felt lining all around the door cards, which is lovely. It's a pretty high-spec Golf R, this. You don't see many with two-tone leather, reverse cameras, and dynamic chassis control. And yeah, I mean, the thing is, with the Golf R, it's just such a good daily driver. But does the three-door feel compromised? You know, so far, I would say, not really. You know, at a stretch, I can push my seat forwards a little bit, and getting in the back is still pretty easy. And the thing is, I do think this just kind of looks a bit more like a proper hot hatch. Less doors equals more sporty in my mind. Maybe I'm wrong, but you can let me know in the comments. Then, as usual, parking is an absolute breeze with this thing, whether it's 5-door or a 3-door. Because you've got quite a fast steering rack and plenty of steering angle, it's just easy to park, really. And this one having a reverse camera makes it even easier. So you can see I'm already at the full lock on the steering wheel. Got accurate parking sensors. The only thing that is showing its age just a tad is this infotainment system, with its pretty low resolution, crappy reverse camera. The other thing I hate about this interior, like absolutely loathe, is this. Why is the on button not just like fixed and centered? Like, it's never actually pointing straight up. Ah, it's so annoying. Let me know if you guys find that annoying as well, or if I'm just being an idiot. But yeah, parking this thing's absolutely easy. Oh, and I forgot to mention, actually getting out of the car is pretty easy as well. Sometimes, you know, because you've got slightly longer doors than the 5-door, it can be a little bit harder. But it's not the end of the world. And then coming out of junctions, it's just easy. You don't even need to give it any throttle. It's got so much low down grunt. The only thing I wish they would do is map the gearbox so it keeps you in that torque band. It's one thing I noticed, like the Golf GTI, the gearbox in that seems to just be tuned a bit better, so it always stays at around 1500 revs, which is where all that juicy torque comes in. Whereas the engine in this, the torque doesn't come in until about 1900 in reality. And you do notice it kind of has to change down a gear to actually give you any power. So if you need power at a pinch, you kind of have to drive it in race mode everywhere with the gearbox in S. Anyway, I digress. Let's reset our average consumption and see what kind of fuel economy we can get on the motorway. VW quote, this will do 40 mpg on the combined cycle, so we're going to have a little handling test first, which gives you the kind of town driving bit, I suppose, and then we're going to take it on the motorway, which would be like the extra urban cycle, and see if we can still hit 40 miles per gallon. My only worry is that this has the 6-speed gearbox, which means we will be sitting at a slightly higher amount of revs on the motorway, which might affect our fuel economy, but hopefully not. Anyway, let's get to that roundabout, get the traction off, and have a little taste of the handling first. Right, time for race mode. This will sharpen up the throttle response, drop a couple of gears, make the gear shifts even sharper, pump in a little bit of fake sound, and most importantly, it will stiffen up the suspension. Let's get the traction into sports as well, gearbox into manual, and look at that. DSG comes to life in this thing. And then basically, it's a Golf R, so you just plant your foot, and it just goes, really. Very quick car. Chassis wise, it's not super dynamic, but it's not boring to drive. It's still nice. It's a very satisfying car to drive quickly. You notice in this one, you don't really get any pops and bangs. I don't know, there's part of me that kind of likes that, because it's kind of more pure, but then also part of me wants to be a little bit of an Asbo still. It's just kind of a personal preference. Depends what mood you're in, I think. Anyway, let's skip through this bit of traffic and get on to the motorway, shall we? Oh, we finally made it through all that traffic. So let's get this thing on the motorway. And there's one slight issue. And it's, when you're in eco, it kind of deadens the throttle quite a bit. So like I'm giving it a quarter throttle and it just doesn't really give you much torque, which is kind of unfortunate. And then once you're on the motorway, you're sitting at 2,600 RPM at 70 miles an hour, which, you know, for a short while is okay, but over longer journeys it's not as good as the 7-speed. I'll put it that way, basically. But now that I have figured out how to use the adaptive cruise control system, it's very easy to use if you follow the instructions. Yeah, whack it on 70 miles an hour, keeps you a safe distance from the car in front. Same as all other VW products. You know, I've used it plenty of times before. You'd think I'd know how to use it as well, wouldn't you? But yeah, it makes driving, especially in traffic like that back there, very relaxing. And yeah, overall, a pretty nice car. Suspension is nice and soft in eco as well, because it's basically comfort mode. And then wind noise, is it lower than the 5-door? Do you know what? One thing I am noticing is there is less wind noise coming from up here. And that is because the B pillar is all the way back there. Now in the 5-door, the B pillar is kind of right next to your ear, so you sometimes get a little bit of whistle coming through. But that isn't happening in this. The only thing you do notice is obviously the engine. But, you know, it's not the end of the world. But it would be nicer if it was sitting at like 1800 revs, like in the 7-speed. But the adaptive cruise, yeah, is very good in these. You can see the van in front of me now, so it'll start slowing us down. And then if you go too fast into a corner as well, it will slow you down as well. It's a very good system. I mean, you can pretty much drive this thing without having to touch the throttle or the brake. Anyway, now let's get ourselves onto the motorway and see what kind of MPG we can manage. So, I'm going to bring us off early. As you saw, there was quite a bit of traffic, so we didn't really want to sit in that, do we? Because it's not going to give us an accurate figure anyway. However, we have just done 40.7 miles per gallon still, which is a good figure. You know, this EA 888 engine really is a cut above the rest of the 2-litre units. Absolutely brilliant bit of kit. Fast, efficient. What more could you want? Well, maybe a bit of noise. We will find out what it sounds like momentarily, but first let's get the traction off, let's get it back in race mode, and let's have a bit of fun, shall we? Okay, back in race mode, traction all the way off, because we don't need it. It's a Golf R. Let's have a gander, shall we? Does the 3-door handle differently from the 5-door? Yeah, a little bit of oversteer there, only a tiny bit though. Power out of corners. Nice. DSG fart, that's what we like to hear. And the engine sounds racy, although some of that is some fake noise. Yeah, typical Golf R handling really. You have to be going very, very fast to really get the chassis to move around in this thing. Which is kind of like good and a bad thing. Like even the brakes, very nice. Wow, very sharp brakes, crikey. Maybe the previous owner put some stiffer pads on this thing. Alright, a little sound check. We love a DSG fart on this channel, don't we? Alright, let's do a little sound check again. I love DSG farts, brilliant. And yeah, coming quickly around corners, really chuck it in. I mean, you can just keep your foot in it. And you feel the rear kind of squirming about a bit, but it never really lets go. Unless you do a Scandinavian flick, which if you don't know is when you kind of turn the wheel one way and then the other to kind of upset the balance of the car. Not something you should really do on a public road. Yeah, the brakes are very nice and sharp on this thing. Super solid. Steering is... it's okay. Not a huge amount of feel. obviously doesn't really feel different from the 5-door either. Come off the throttle though, you can get it to go a little bit sideways. And then plant your foot again. It's one of those cars that kind of just tries to sort you out. You know, it's always there to give you a bit of a helping hand, I find. Oh look, our fuel economy has gone down. What a surprise. Do you know what, even though this is kind of fake noise coming into the cabin, I still quite like it, because it's not too intrusive. It just adds a bit of beefiness. Let's do one more sound check, just for good measure. Oh, we can open our panoramic roof as well. Funny noises. Yeah, this DCC really sharpens up the chassis in race mode. Makes a huge difference. No, it's only a little bit stiffer, but that's all the Golf R really needed, I find. Just needed that extra bit of sharpness. It really helps the front end of the car as well, just kind of really feel sharp. It's the one thing the stock Golf R without DCC was definitely missing, was just that little edge. Just makes the steering feel more responsive as well. Yeah, especially under braking, you can really feel the chassis rotate. Yeah, feels lovely. And you know what, I reckon this thing is going to be an absolute beast down a B road. You know, the stock Golf R without DCC is pretty good, so let's see what this 3-door DCC equipped version is like. Let's go down our favourite British B road then. Nice stiff suspension, guy in the middle of the road for some reason. Lovely DSG farts. One thing I love about this car is that you can really dive into a corner under the brakes, and it kind of just tucks its nose in. It's lovely. Hear the rear kind of squirming around just a little bit there. Never really gets out of hand though, I find. This gearbox is still razor sharp as well. These DSGs really are fantastic. Even around town, you know, it's jerkier than the Zen F8 Speed, but I would by no means call this a jerky box. You know, the dual clutch transmission in the BMW M4, now that is jerky. Right, can we hit 60 before the corner? Let's go! Probably. Look at that, easily. Of course we can. This thing I love about this engine, I was in 3rd gear then when I really should have been in 2nd, but the torque and the power was still there. That's what makes these cars so fast. The thing is, it's just easy to drive fast as well. Like, you barely even have to put a thought into it. Which, you know, if you're late for something, it's pretty helpful. Yeah, steering feels much sharper with DCC actually. Really notice it on these tight little twisty corners. Notice it going over potholes as well. Oh, that mid-range punch is so addictive. What a nice biker letting me past. Thumbs up for him. Coming into corners like that, hard on the brakes. Oh yeah. So the Golf R, you do have to drive it very quickly to really exploit it, which unfortunately does have its downside, and that is that you kind of don't really feel what's going on until you're going very quickly. So my recommendation, if you want to buy a Golf R, make sure you're near some roads where you can go properly quick and really enjoy it. Otherwise you kind of just, you don't get the most out of it. It's such a capable platform that, you know, it could probably do with a remap and some chassis mods, blah, 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 and some chassis mods. But yeah, even in stock form, it's still a bit of a beast, and it's easy to live with. Which brings me on to, should you get the 5-door over the 3-door? Do you know what? I don't think you need to. I think even if you have a kid as well, or like dogs or whatever, I think it's still really easy to get into the back of this thing. You know, it takes an extra like 3 seconds, literally. Setting up a child seat might be, you know, not the easiest thing in the world, but there's still room for a child seat back there. And when you think about it, you can save yourself like upwards of £5,000. So yeah, I really don't think you need the 5-door car. The only thing I will say is if you want a car that is very relaxing on the motorway and you want the digital cockpit, then you might want to get one that's from like 2018 where you get the 7-speed DSG. But I still think this is a fantastic car. And the thing is, with the money you save, you can spend it on remapping, modding, making this car look cool, you know, getting some new wheels. So, personally, I'd go for one of these ones. Find a nice one like this with the 2-tone leather and the pan roof. Absolutely worth every single penny. Anyway, as always, if you enjoyed this content, please give us a like, and why not subscribe, as not only can you see more content like this, you can see everything we have for sale, which includes this rather rare, actually, VW Golf R. There will be a link down in the description for the car, and there will also be a link for our generic website. Just about got through that without stuttering. Anyway, my name has been Tom, and you have been watching Paragon Cars. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.